since you have joined our GLR team, you are one of, if not the most catalytic, aggressive multipliers that I know in our region. I'm always telling Danielle that I feel like when Wes Duff calls, I'm running to jump on a moving train. Like you are getting things done. I love that about you. The grass doesn't grow underneath your feet, and you have such a kingdom imagination and mindset. And I just want to thank you right at the very beginning of our conversation. Thank you for what you're doing in the North Woods of Wisconsin, in Rice Lake. But beyond that, you're invigorating your entire congregation to lean into this biblical understanding of multiplication and making a difference in northern Wisconsin. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being my friend and for multiplying the church and expanding God's kingdom. So the question I have just to right out of the gate is, who are you? Where did you come from? And how did this journey of multiplication begin for you?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, John. I grew up in not a Christian background. Um, had a lot of fun growing up. Some of it was not good fun, what we would call good Christian fun, but got to following a band around the country called Fish, and just kind of went full on tilt, sinful life, and led to a lot of bad things, a lot of hurt in my life, and me hurting other people in my life. And one day I was coming out of a concert, and some young lady handed me a gospel tract of all things,
Really?
and it wrecked me. It said on the front part of it, "Are you do are you tired of drugs? Turn next page. Are you tired of the violence in your town? Turn next page." And it's if you're really ready to change, turn the page, and it was Christ on our cross, and he he just called me out of that crowd, 50 to 100,000 people outside of Detroit at a concert, and went home after a series of events, called the only Christian I knew, walked into a church of 12 people and gave my life to Christ, that kind of vibe. And got an internship about 6 months later. I was preaching about 6 weeks later, sharing my testimony, sharing at different churches. People were intrigued by that story. And one pastor saw me, said, "Hey, you're going to come work for me." I didn't even know I was being called in to ministry at that part. I just wanted to help with the youth ministry, basically. And then he came in a month later, said, "You're going to school." I said, "I don't want to go to school." He said, "You're going to school." And I said, "Well, I can't pay for school." He says, "That's we don't care because we can." And it was actually in a school setting. They were teaching about the heroes of their faith and stuff like that. And a slide came up that said one guy had claimed to win 10,000 people to Christ. And I remember sitting in that class saying, "That's what I want to do." And that's been an ominous goal since then. I don't keep track in a journal somewhere, but I think um, that 10,000 seemed like an impossibility sitting there at the moment, and I wanted to dream with God about that, and that's always been in the back of my mind too. You know, so from very early on, I wanted to win people to Christ, and the meaning of that and what you do with that's deepened over the years, but that's where it started.
Man, I love that. And before we get to the question of multiplication, what is multiplication in your mind? This makes a lot of sense when I hear you share that because, you've had a lot of success in ministry, but the Lord has really, done a number on your life in a lot of different ways. And so, man, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Um, to me it's about his grace, and I know what a restored life looks like. All my friends, a lot of my friends are dead and in prison, and he saved me. My wife likes to put the emphasis on that, like he saved you, um, kind of vibe. And so multiplication to me is really about the individual, but it's about the ecosystem of the kingdom, that you disciple someone to disciple someone else. And then that leads to 2 or 3 generations. There's some grandparents in the faith that, when I look back at my life, had so many wonderful mentors. I'm indebted to the local church. They clothed me, they fed me, they educated me. It seems the only responsible thing to give back to the local church and its multiplication efforts. And it really does revolve around a young man who was just destined for nothing, and the gospel changed everything. And so then how do we build those systems where it's not just Wes doing that, but how how do we initiate leaders? How do we get to the second, third generation? How's church, all different sizes, all different backgrounds, how can they do that? And when you start to see a generational planting of the gospel and it's bringing people to maturity and faith, that's what I would call multiplication.
Yeah. Share with us a little bit of your background because you're a gift to the Wesleyan Church from the Church of God of Anderson. I got lots of friends in the Church of God of Anderson, but tell me a little bit, where are you from and how did you get to the northern part of Wisconsin?
Yeah. Kelly, my wife and I lived in the same town for 41 years, you know. So I pastored most of my life in my hometown, which is a wild experience, especially when you have my background. Me walking up, talking about the gospel, brought about a myriad of reactions. But we loved the Church of God, and we loved our home church. I pastored Kelly's home church as the lead pastor, so she was born on that pew, and I ended up becoming the pastor.
Wow.
I was a youth pastor there for 8 years. Did some other work at other churches, some church plant stuff. Worked as a youth pastor again, and then Braille Boulevard Church of God called me to be their lead pastor for 8 or 9 years. And honestly, I mean, we loved the church. We loved the house we had. If you could take your Polaroid shot, it was everything that we ever had wanted. Um, I was on sabbatical. I felt called to pursue a degree, a Master of Arts in theology. And so I was taking a class at Fuller, and it was a vocational calling class.
Hmm.
And they had an exercise one day in there, said, write down your dream church, your dream location, everything you want. And the teacher kind of framed it like, don't be the suffering servant. Write down everything you want. What would make it a dream for you? And so I was kind of obnoxious with that piece of paper and that assignment. And I just kind of went for it. And after I did that, about 3 weeks later, I saw a profile come across my computer, and it was Red Cedars. I don't remember how I didn't know Wesleyan. I didn't know anyone at this church. And I was compelled by that profile of what they wanted to do. And so I went upstairs and asked my wife, and I said, hey, can I email over to this? And I was asking very expecting a big fat no, and kind of flippantly she said, yeah, I don't care. So I said, oh, she said it. So I went downstairs and I typed up, sent it, and it was almost a relief, like, okay, that I don't know anyone up there. But 3 weeks later they called, and I'm like, uh-oh. And I was like, all right, I'll do an interview. It just became more and more real. And I would just say that God, he just, this is our dream location, or the heartbeat of this church. And he matched that with what he was already doing in my life. And it didn't come without pain. We moved away from all of our family. I had two young boys of 12 and 10. They were 8 and 10 at the time. And it was hard. It was hard emotionally. It was hard to make that move, but we just believed in the dream that God was doing in our heart to see more happen. And that move forced a lot of growth in me and Kelly and our boys, and it's been good. But that's how we got here.
I love it. I love it. Well, welcome to Wisconsin. You're in a beautiful place. Um, Give us a very clear, concise definition of multiplication.
Making disciples who make disciples.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So now everything we're going to talk about, what you're doing, your pursuit and everything you would say is built off of that definition when we talk about multiplication or
Yes. And I would say that, for me, as coming up, this might not be everyone's experience. This is just my anecdotal experience of, it seemed like the discipleship guys thought the outreach guys were shallow. The outreach guys thought the discipleship guys were a little bit pharisaical, and they never matched. I never understood that. I really didn't. Even from a young age, I like, this is dumb. So for me to build up first what a disciple is important in the multiplication process.
that's right.
What is the end goal of discipleship? And then multiplication is merely an invitation to that discipleship process. Um,
Dude,
uh,
that is perfect. Beautiful. That is
you know,
exactly right.
so I think a lot of people just go, go, go. What are you inviting them to? And for us, it's a family ministry, it's discipleship, it's a leadership pathway. But if you're not careful as you go deep, if you don't bake multiplication in the going from the beginning, you might not ever get those people to move.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we talk about it in discipleship is you don't understand what you're studying until you go. Bible study is not complete until obedience happens. And mature believers reach out for the lost. Mature believers love the broken. And they're just not in competition. It's actually the outpouring of your discipleship to invite someone else into it. And that's where the Luke 10 and sending out the 12 and the 72 come into. You have to go play. You have to go exercise. You can't just sit around and take in wonderful kingdom fruit for yourself all day. So I see it as a perfect marriage.
Yeah, amen. Well, it didn't take long for you to get to Rice Lake before you called Danielle and I and said, you're new to the denomination, you're new to the district, let's meet, let's talk about multiplication, which was a huge, by the way, invitation to me. Most pastors, I have to go try to get on their doorstep, try to earn credibility with them, try to build a relationship with them so that I can have a conversation with them. But you reached out to Danielle and I. Thank you for doing that. But as we talk about, where we're going with this, what has happened? Let's just go for the last year, because I think you've been there at Rice Lake for 2 years. What has happened over the last year? How did it start? What did you have to stop? What are some learning moments? What are some key course decisions? What are resources invested? Key players, key milestones? Just tell us the story for people that are going, what has he been doing in the North?
Okay. Um, for the pastors that are listening, I think this part is important. And these were the things just drilled in my head. I think I think the first thing you do in that, so especially if you're newer to ministry, or in your first couple of years, or you don't know how to maybe start to lead a vision. The first thing I think gets missed in a lot of these for churches that want to grow, pastors that have all this vision, just have integrity in all the small decisions you're doing all around you. And so for me, it was laying a groundwork of all the boring stuff,
Mm-hmm.
making sure we handled the board meetings well, making sure the finances were in check, making sure church communication, because they start checking those things off, and it just builds credibility for you to live out your dream. If all those other things are a mess, and then you try to because you're going to have conflict or pushback when you try to do multiplication.
Mm.
um, Philosophy, inside, people's feelings being hurt, just all the thing. Like it's drama to multiply, and you're not going to get around that drama. Not everybody's going to give you a high five and say you're awesome and you get to take on. So the first part is that responsibility to make sure you can do the small things, lead well in those small things. And then we just started to set some discipleship parameters and started to pour into people and started to define discipleship. So family discipleship, leadership. We invested a lot of time into what we were going to call people to, and Red Cedar describes that as full life. We did a lot of teaching on that. We do the great commandment before we do the great commission, so that people, as we multiply, the way you celebrate multiplication or the way you talk about it's going to be extremely important. No one can argue with multiplication when you are putting forth a vision to teach them how to love God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength.
I love that.
But if you set out in vision first and the great commission without the great commandment, it's going to sound sleazy, especially to the culture since COVID.
Mm.
Um, People don't want big churches. People don't like, there's like, here we go again. All the stories in the paper here. What's this pastor about? So speak to the heart and the essence of multiplication. Don't just talk about the parameters, the numbers, the buildings, the locations, and all that. Primarily speaking to about the one person who's in front of the other person, who they're going to love on and call on to spiritual maturity, help them with their family, disciple them, allow the Holy Spirit to work in their life. people have you got to be really mean to argue with that kind of vision casting in that. So once we did the small things right, we kind of set the heartbeat of it upright. Then we started to lay out some just small sectors of multiplication. So we wanted personal evangelism. We wanted everyone to feel like this doesn't have to be a program. You already have friends and families in your life, and that. So we did a Dave Ferguson book, Bless, and so that's our model for one-on-one evangelism. You know, it's not the perfect model, but I like it, and that got that moving. So monthly we hold evangelism classes, and we just keep walking through that book, and we keep that in front of people, and that has been a slow grow, but it is starting to become a part of our culture. Next, we got into fresh expressions, where we just wanted people to be innovative and think of any outside the box kind of ministry that they could grab a hold of. And so it didn't matter. We've done sports ministry. That one did take on a bigger role. That does have a little bit more of a corporate model here, a traditional staff oversight because of the expanse of it.
Yeah.
But we also had people like foster care. We wanted them to be small. We were really going after niche boutique style ministries where people were using their giftings. And man, that just kind of got people fired up that we were releasing them. And that changed the vision of Red Cedar a little bit, that it was staff led, directed. And that caused a little turmoil from staff philosophy to, man, we're letting people run. And as long as you're not hurting someone else, God bless. And go teach them about Christ. And it didn't have to be perfect. The graphic didn't have to be perfect for, all these standards that we put that may choke out the gospel on a level like that when you're just letting everyday ordinary people do things. Well, it's going to look everyday and ordinary, and get over that. So then we started to look big picture. How could we multiply as a church? And we went back to the discipleship and leadership thing. And in our context, we're in the big town of 9,000 around here. And we have little towns of 2,000, 2,500. And so going into this, I don't even know if campusing is a sustainable model in this area. I still don't know that sitting here today, a couple years later. Red Cedar doesn't have the money to say we're going to set $300,000 aside every year to fund this campus over here, call a pastor from across the country, go get into a $2 million building. So what we did is we looked at two towns that were close to us. If someone wanted to drive here, they could. And people drive up to a half hour around here all the time for everything, for oil changes to grocery shopping. So these towns are 20 minutes away and about 28 minutes away. So we trained 7 small group leaders. We gave them 2 apprentices each, and we put them through a training program to get them ready to do small groups. We we partnered with local businesses to offer a space that was neutral, not people's house, because we're just kind of coming in. So we're ready. We actually launched that a couple weeks ago, where we're on social media. We sent a mailer to everyone's house. Like, it's awesome when you can afford to send a mailer to everyone's house. And it's like $1,500. We hit everybody. Everybody in this whole town knows about these 7 small groups.
The same guy delivered every invitation. So
Right. So I remember before, when we do citywide, it was like our church had to save up for that for a long time. But no, we were ready to send that mailer. We had a couple specialty, grief share, recovery, because that's the needs of our town. So we went after that, and we treated these 7 small groups launch as if it was a church plant. So John has a book, and he can reference that in here. What's the name of the book, John, for them? The multiplication book that you guys do at the boot camp?
next first steps, and we'll come and do a boot camp for you.
The
Thank you.
first step book, the first steps book, we kind of just made that smaller. We did the Cliff Notes version of it. So we treated launching new 7 groups like we're going to be a new faith community in this town. So we interviewed teachers. The the police chief, we did all that. We saw the needs of the community. And so we walked through like 7 steps to get ready. We called our core team to ourselves. So we got 4 core team members who are not teaching small groups. They're just coaches. They called 7 people into leadership and trained them. And then we lined up the apprentices to be ready to be trained as they do these small groups. In that, we told the 4 core team leaders, they have 18 months to get this up and going because they're going to the next town. And we're just trying that
You just set that expectation right there.
up front.
Yep.
And we had a lot of people check out of the vision. Like when we would do our launch parties, we were pretty hardcore about what we wanted and what we were going to try. And when they tried to turn, no thanks. We have 50 other small groups you can go join. It's not these. And they tried to bring in their Bible studies. They tried to do, vision, when they call it vision creep, and all that. And we don't know that our vision is perfect, but we want to try our vision up front to have a real test case to give multiplication a chance.
That's good.
And, we didn't do it in homes. Through coaching, something we learned is that if you allow the small group leader to also be the host, you'll never get the group to split. And after looking back to 20 years of doing small group, it's like, that's a mind-blowing tool.
Yeah.
That I didn't know
about that. Since you told me that, explain that out, because that's key.
So I've struggled for the last 15 years. My experience in small group life to get them to multiply is they make 8 to 12 best friends and I can't get them to move. And then you have a group of leaders. It's a lot of fruit wasting on the ground in leadership because they're not moving out. And so I'm being coached, and my coach said this, like, put a small group leader in, but it cannot be their house. That's why we chose businesses. So they cannot get comfy and they don't have an affection for a business where they're meeting. And then they have apprentice 1 who will take over their group once the group becomes big enough to multiply. But the first small group leader and apprentice 2 leave the group, and we'll find them a new place to visit. The thing being is that, apprentice 1 is the strongest leader, but when the small group leader and apprentice 2 move, apprentice 2 is now the strongest leader in that group, and you're preparing him, and you lock and load another leader. You just keep going. So that's what I like. I don't know the proper term, but it's multiplication built in the DNA of the group. And then reverse engineering it forced us to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't want large, elaborate Bible studies. We wanted people to eat food, pray together, look at a simple text, ask 3 questions. We bake prayer into that. They have to pray for each other for 7. So in some ways, it's real high accountability, and the discipleship is hard, but the processes we kept simple so anyone could be involved and grow in their leadership. And so, man, that took me 25 years to figure out. And I'm really pumped about that piece. And I think it gives it the oxygen to multiply, where things in the past, I think that is stunted at certain levels purely based on the system that I created.
Yeah. Let me hit timeout and just review for anybody who's catching up, because I'm jotting everything down and I can just see the pattern is multiply, get discipleship good, get discipleship, multiplying disciples, disciples making disciples. Then you gather a group of leaders and here's what leadership is going to look like. And then you're multiplying leaders. And here's how a leader makes a leader: an apprentice 1, apprentice 2, and then the leader takes apprentice 2 and goes to 1, leaving the 2 apprentice. You got it all figured out, but it's all about multiplying then small groups. Multiply disciples, multiply leaders, multiply smaller groups that are reproducible, easy to engage, high relationship, high accountability, and easy engagement. So take us from there. I mean, this is absolutely, for some people, brand new, like, I can do this, because they have all those pieces already in front of them at their church.
Right. Yes. I don't want to overpromise this, but I think you can do this anywhere from under $7,000. You know what I mean? And truthfully, there are probably ways that you don't have to spend $1.
Right.
They just so we did save up some cash, and we put some out, so it definitely makes it easier
Yep.
to get the word out and start some things. But so remind me of the question again, John. I don't want to go
I
off on a
forgot it.
tangent.
It was such good stuff. The question is, what has happened over the last year? What things have you had to stop doing? What are some learning moments? You talked about the small group thing and how to multiply small groups, which I think is pinnacle. Key course decisions, and you've walked through those. Resources that you've invested. You talk about the mailers, and then the key players and key milestones. So you've sent a group of 25 down to Shatek.
Yeah. Okay. And you had a follow-up question to that. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything when we were in the middle of it. After we just wrapped up that last part, you kind of did a summary, so we're not talking too fast or going too fast. Did you have anything else you wanted to
No,
ask?
just wanted to
Okay.
summarize where we were at because it's good stuff.
Yeah. So going back before that, when we had small groups, so say you have regular Bible studies and you have leadership already going,
Hmm.
but maybe they're not multiplying at the rate you did. What I did is, I think in church leadership, you don't try to change your whole church. Um, it's like putting a lighter on a big log. It doesn't work.
Oh,
So
that's
this is really, I looked for where God was already working and there was already some fruit. And there was a guy named Gordy Tatro who was just lighting things up on fire.
hmm.
He's just calling people to him. And so we started with one group and we multiplied that one group. And then we got a chance to replace himself. And then another group replaced themselves. Those were our first two core team members. And then when we gave the vision, two other very mature people stepped up and said, I want to be a part of the core team. And they had all the criteria and that. So it doesn't matter where you're at. It does. It's a church of 25, church of 200. I really think this is a tool someone can use. You're not buying a building. You're not um, paying someone's salary. You have to find a place to meet and offer discipleship. And if you create the right culture in that, it's going to grow. And I don't know, our group start meeting for the first time. We have 7 out there. We might have some that are double what we expect, and some might only one person walk in. So my biggest job right now is to provide encouragement through the fall to not let these leaders get discouraged.
Sure.
But anyone can do this. You have to be able to train them, teach them, equip them, make them feel comfortable, give them a solid vision, and set them up. I mean, we Christians know how to do Bible study. We know how we know how to do discipleship. And then if you repackage that with a vision for transformation of people's lives, I think it's a fire that always wins. I've just never
Yeah.
seen it. Um, so to lay out some very simple things to get started, and I've already offered this to John. I mean, if you're listening and you want um, help with this, Red Cedar Church is in with the Westland District here to help as many churches to multiply as we can. I don't think this is rocket science. It's some hard work. It took us a year in preparation, and here we are, and everyone's really excited about it. And the emails are, I looked at 20 emails last couple of days of people desperately needing Jesus and wanting to connect with the groups. So that's fuel for my heart to be a part of that.
That's right. That's what it's all about. Um, Two questions. Who's poured into you? And because you've been learning a ton and just soaking up everything, who's been pouring into you? And then who are you specifically pouring into? And what does that look like?
Yes. So coming to Red Cedar, where I was at in my pastoral abilities and leadership, one of the things I knew that I really needed to focus on, especially a church this size, was a reproducible leadership pathway.
Hmm.
And so we looked around. We went with Mac Lake, which is not easy for everybody to grab a hold of. That is an expensive bill,
Yep.
and they're walking us through that. So that poured into us corporately. Um, Also, I was part of a cohort round table, and Ralph Moore was sitting here and there, and I'd read his books and could be the number one um, North American church planner. And so I took a risk and forced my way into that circle. And we've been coaching. And what I do is I just prepare everything I think, I run it by him, and then he cuts about 40-50% of that back and gives me an easier way to do it. And, following those steps. And so I've been poured into a lot of people. I've always believed. So if you're listening to this, ask for mentors, make the time. If you're not being coached, you're not going to grow to your full capacity.
Amen.
Quit figuring out stuff on your own. Um, it's just not smart. It's just not smart. You don't have the time to figure it out on your own, and you don't have to. The things that we want to do in the district, other churches have already done 100 times. So go figure it out with them. Yours might look different. God might give you a unique vision, but you're going to learn a lot about what not to do as much as what you should do. And those coaching relationships have meant everything and have expedited the process if I was doing it on my own 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You'd have to figure it all out, read so many books when you can just get those coaches. And, you last year in July, so not even a year ago, we got to come to Rice Lake and do a boot camp specifically for you, brought in people from the Northwest District. So people from Missouri came over. But you hosted that boot camp. That was 2 days, and you've been to a lot of different trainings. Uh, Throw me a bone here and give a little plug for boot camps and why people should send their lay leaders, because you send a lot of lay leaders to that.
Yes, with our model, so say in the fall, the 7 small groups pop and we're looking at 50 to 75 people. Our model will be then maybe to open a small venue, but it will be lay-led preaching and worship. And because that's who we are, it's what we can afford. And, we're going to make that happen. So it's not just for the traditional church planner who is going to parachute in somewhere, or, have to go raise $500,000 and go. In order for us to win in this context, we have to raise up 100 to 200 leaders who are ready to go for the Northwoods. Like we want to make a major impact in this area, and that's going to require a lot of lay leaders to do the work of what we would normally see vocationally paid pastors do.
Yeah.
But at the boot camp, that book is probably the most. It's not concise, but it's the most concise, clear things you're going to get for reproduction and multiplication, and to put in a form. And you can tweak it as you go, but that will give you the do's and don'ts. And in all the ones I've been to, it hits on all the major points of being able to ask for funding, give vision, calling people to yourself, giving you events and all these things to do to get you a place to where you have a chance to multiply. And what I see with most multiplications are good-hearted people who will have revival, will have the event, but they haven't built the infrastructure of the team or getting ready for what you could receive if something happened. Now, as we go to Shattuck, it's responsible because if we win people to Christ, we have a discipleship mechanism for them. And
Yep.
so boot camp will get you ready for you not to be a burned out person without a plan. It will force you to take bigger steps, more risk along the way, because you're not doing it by yourself. You're building a team and you have a game plan, and everybody needs a game plan and everybody needs a team. So if you come to the boot camp, you're going to learn a lot. It's going to be like drinking from a fire hydrant, and that's what it's designed to do. But then you take it back and you make it your own, and you walk through that process, and it's going to lead you. Without following those steps, we wouldn't be 20% down the road to where we are today with multiplication.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. It's been exciting, man, just to be along for the journey. Thank you for including this, and thank you for, taking the time today on your day off to have this interview. I'm hoping that people will listen to it, share it, learn from it, glean from it. My hope is that people will reach out to you. They can go to your site, your Red Cedar Church in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. They can get on your site, email you from there. But thank you for the time that you've given, dude. Any last word that you'd like to share that maybe I haven't asked or give you an opportunity for?
The verse that has meant so much to me as we go to this multiplication is God wants to give us fruit and fruit that will last. And being fruitful glorifies him. That's in John 15. We're not doing this for ourselves or a platform or for any other reason. God put the gospel seed in your heart and he's produced fruit in your life. Not only does your personal story glorify him, but when you allow other people to be transformed under your ministry and they start bearing the fruit of the Holy Spirit, that glorifies our Father. And that's the only reason we're doing it. And it's the most beautiful story you can ever be a part of. And if that is God's heart, and if God has called you, you're going to win in that sooner or later. There's always a lot of bad beats with multiplication, and it's a not for the faint of heart, but it's the most rewarding ministry you can ever do, and it's God's heart and its heartbeat from the very beginning. Be fruitful and multiply. He desires for you to be fruitful in this way, and it's not about stacking the numbers. It's not about your platform. It's not about your church's metrics. Those are lost people who God deeply cares about, and the church has to mobilize people to see transformation, and it's just what we do. That is a church. So, I mean, I believe in you. I know you can. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And just trust that God is behind you and your leadership in every way. You're going to win.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Wes. Seriously, you're a great friend. Really appreciate this. Some really good stuff. Thank you so much for your ministry, and may you be blessed.
God bless, John. Thank you.